Your soulmate is angry with you because of your family. The truth they've been hiding. The rain had stopped only moments before sunset, leaving tiny droplets clinging to every leaf as though the entire world had paused to remember something painful. Somewhere, two people who had never stopped thinking about each other stood beneath different skies, both believing the other had chosen silence. Neither of them knew that silence had been carefully built by someone else. It did not begin with betrayal. It began with fear. Your soulmate had once believed love could survive anything. Distance. Doubts. Time. Even misunderstandings. But they had underestimated one force that quietly reshapes lives without asking permission. Family. For weeks they replayed every conversation they ever had with you. Every promise echoed inside their thoughts like footsteps in an empty hallway. You'll never lose me. I'll always tell you the truth. We'll face everything together. Those words became impossible to understand after everything suddenly changed. Your calls became shorter. Your messages became cautious. Your laughter sounded forced. Then came the excuses. I'm busy. Maybe another day. I need some space. Your soulmate accepted each explanation because love often chooses patience before suspicion. Yet patience has limits. Late at night they began asking themselves questions that no loving heart wants to ask. What if they never loved me the way I loved them? What if their family never wanted me around? What if every smile I believed in was simply kindness instead of love? Every question became heavier than the last. Meanwhile, inside your own home, conversations were taking place that your soulmate would never hear. Some relatives smiled politely whenever their name appeared. Others changed the subject immediately. One person, however, carried a secret that nobody expected. That secret had nothing to do with your soulmate's personality. It had nothing to do with money. Nothing to do with appearance. Nothing to do with status. Instead, it was built upon an old misunderstanding that had quietly grown larger every year until everyone treated it as truth. The frightening part? Nobody bothered checking whether the story was actually true. Rumors are strange things. They travel faster than honesty. They become stronger every time someone repeats them. Eventually they sound like facts. Your soulmate sensed something was wrong during the last family gathering they were invited to. The smiles felt rehearsed. The conversations stopped whenever they entered the room. A few relatives avoided eye contact altogether. Someone whispered while looking directly toward them. Nobody explained why. They left that evening carrying an invisible wound. Not because anyone insulted them openly. Because nobody welcomed them sincerely. There is a unique kind of loneliness that comes from feeling unwanted inside the family of the person you love. Your soulmate experienced exactly that. Afterwards they promised themselves they would never force acceptance. If your family truly disliked them, perhaps walking away would protect everyone. But walking away from love proved much harder than expected. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Still, every familiar song reminded them of you. Every sunrise reminded them of plans that were never fulfilled. Every crowded street made them wonder if today's coincidence might finally bring both of you face to face again. Meanwhile, you were fighting battles nobody could see. You wanted peace between the people you loved. Instead, you found yourself standing between two worlds that refused to understand each other. Every attempt to defend your soulmate created another argument at home. Every attempt to stay quiet damaged your relationship with the person your heart had chosen. You felt trapped. Not because love had disappeared. Because courage had become expensive. One evening an elderly relative quietly entered your room carrying a faded photograph. They placed it on the table without saying a word. Inside the picture stood two smiling young people whose story had ended decades ago. They loved each other, the older relative whispered. But our family destroyed it. You looked up in confusion. The relative continued. We promised ourselves never to repeat that mistake. A long silence followed. Then tears appeared. We failed. Those single words carried generations of regret. Until that moment you believed resistance against your soulmate came from recent events. Instead, much of it came from fear inherited from people who had never healed from their own heartbreaks. Old pain often disguises itself as protection. Families sometimes believe they are saving someone when, in reality, they are passing unfinished wounds to the next generation. Your soulmate knew none of this. From their perspective, only one conclusion made sense. You had chosen your family over them. That belief slowly transformed sadness into anger. Not explosive anger. Not hateful anger. The quiet kind. The kind that stops sending messages first. The kind that refuses to ask for explanations anymore. The kind that smiles in public while privately grieving what might have been. Friends noticed the change. You seem different. I'm just tired. You don't laugh like before. I'll be okay. Those answers sounded convincing. They weren't. Late one night your soulmate opened an old conversation between the two of you. Hundreds of messages filled the screen. Dreams. Jokes. Plans. Future vacations. Names for imaginary pets. Promises about growing old together. They didn't delete the conversation. They couldn't. Instead, they whispered into the empty room. If your family truly wanted me gone, why didn't you fight for us? The room offered no reply. But somewhere else, at nearly the same moment, you were staring at the same conversation, asking yourself a different question. How do I explain everything before it's too late? Neither of you realized that the truth had been hidden behind years of assumptions, fear, and silence. And someone who had stayed quiet for far too long, had finally decided that every secret would soon come into the light. The next knock on the door would begin revealing everything. Morning arrived without warmth. The sunlight slipped through the curtains, but neither of you noticed. Some days begin with hope. Others begin with unanswered questions, and this was one of those days. Your soulmate had almost convinced themselves that the story was over. They told friends they were moving on. They buried themselves in work. They smiled during conversations. They laughed at the right moments. But every night, when the world grew quiet, the truth returned. No matter how hard they tried, their hearts still searched for you. At the same time, inside your family home, the atmosphere had become heavier than ever. Conversations ended whenever you entered the room. Eyes avoided yours. Every attempt to mention your soulmate was met with uncomfortable silence. Then something unexpected happened. While helping an elderly relative organize old boxes in the attic, you discovered a small wooden chest covered in dust. It looked forgotten, as though it had not been opened in years. Inside were old photographs, greeting cards, and a single envelope. The envelope had your name written on it. But the handwriting wasn't yours. It belonged to someone in your family. Your hands trembled as you opened it. The letter was never sent. It revealed something that explained years of confusion. Months ago, your soulmate had tried to reach out, not just to you, but to your family. They had written respectfully, asking for a chance to earn their trust, promising they would never hurt you. That message never reached everyone. Instead, one family member quietly hid it. They believed they were protecting you. Instead, they built a wall between two hearts. As you finished reading, your breathing became uneven. Every painful misunderstanding suddenly made sense. Your soulmate hadn't disappeared. They had tried. Again. And again. Every unanswered message they thought you ignored. Every invitation they believed you rejected. Every silence they blamed on you. Some of those moments had never been your choice. Tears blurred the words on the page. For the first time, you understood how deeply both of you had been separated, not by a lack of love, but by decisions made without your knowledge. Across town, your soulmate was trying to let go. They stood beside a quiet lake, watching the ripples spread across the water. Sometimes healing feels like standing still while everything inside you changes. A close friend joined them. You still love them, don't you? Your soulmate looked away. I don't know. The friend smiled gently. If you have to think before answering, then the answer is probably yes. Your soulmate sighed. I love them. I just don't know if love is enough. The words hung in the air. Love had never been the problem. Trust had become the missing piece. Back at home, you confronted the family member who had hidden the letter. The room fell silent. At first, they denied everything. But when you placed the envelope on the table, their expression changed. I thought I was doing the right thing, they whispered. You never gave us the chance to decide, you replied. I was afraid. Afraid of what? They closed their eyes. I was afraid you would leave the family. You finally understood. It wasn't hatred. It was fear. Fear can convince good people to make painful choices. Fear can disguise itself as protection. But protection built on secrets rarely protects anyone. The apology came slowly. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. I should have trusted you. Those 5 words carried years of regret. Yet another question remained. Would your soulmate ever believe the truth? After so much silence, would they think this was simply another excuse? That evening, you stood outside with your phone in your hand. Your thumb hovered over their name. One message. That was all it would take. But what could possibly repair months of pain? On the other side of the city, your soulmate's phone rested on a table. The screen remained dark. They had stopped expecting your messages long ago. Just as they prepared to leave the room, the phone lit up. Your name appeared. Their heartbeat stopped for a moment. They stared at the screen. Not opening it. Not rejecting it. Simply staring. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't reading a message. It's believing it might change everything. They finally took a slow breath and whispered. Please, let this be the truth. The message remained unopened. The silence between you still existed. But for the first time in a very long time, that silence no longer felt like the end. It felt like the beginning of a choice. The phone screen glowed softly in the darkness. Your soulmate's finger hovered over your name, frozen between hope and fear. For several long seconds, they couldn't bring themselves to open the message. Their heart remembered every unanswered question, every lonely night, every moment they had convinced themselves that your silence was your final answer. What if this is just another goodbye? They whispered. Taking a slow breath, they tapped the screen. The message was simple. There are things you don't know. I never stopped caring. Please give me one chance to explain. If you decide to walk away afterward, I'll respect your decision. But don't let someone else's choices become the ending of our story. Your soulmate read it once. Then again. Then a third time. The words didn't erase the pain, but they cracked open a door that had been locked for months. 1,000 emotions rushed through them: relief, sadness, confusion, hope, and the fear of believing too quickly. Meanwhile, you sat alone, staring at your phone. Every passing minute felt like an hour. You wondered if they had ignored your message, or if they had blocked your number long ago. Then your phone vibrated. A reply. Your hands trembled as you opened it. I'm listening. But I need honesty. No more silence. Tears filled your eyes. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise. But it was a chance. For the first time in months, the bridge between your hearts had not collapsed completely. You both agreed to meet in a quiet park where you had once spent an afternoon laughing over dreams that seemed endless. The sky was overcast, as if the weather itself couldn't decide between rain and sunshine. Your soulmate arrived first. They looked different. Not because time had changed their appearance, but because heartbreak had changed the way they carried themselves. A few minutes later, you appeared at the end of the path. Neither of you spoke immediately. Months of silence cannot be replaced with a single sentence. You stood only a few feet apart, yet it felt as though an entire lifetime separated you. Finally, you broke the silence. I'm sorry. Your soulmate looked down. I've heard those words before. I know, you replied. But this time I'm here to explain everything. You handed them the old envelope. They frowned. What's this? The truth. Slowly, they opened it. As they read the hidden letter and learned that someone in your family had intercepted messages, hidden attempts to connect, and fueled misunderstandings, their expression shifted from anger to disbelief. This really happened? You nodded. I didn't know until a few days ago. The silence returned. But this silence felt different. It wasn't filled with distance. It was filled with realization. Your soulmate sat on a nearby bench, holding the letter tightly. So all this time, they weren't all your decisions, they finished quietly. No. And you thought I had simply stopped trying. Yes. Both of you had spent months blaming yourselves for choices neither of you had fully made. The truth was painful. But it was also freeing. Your soulmate finally asked the question that had haunted them from the beginning. If you knew your family didn't approve, why didn't you fight harder for us? You didn't answer immediately. Instead, you looked toward the trees swaying gently in the wind. I was afraid. Afraid of losing them? You nodded. And afraid of losing you. I thought if I kept everyone calm, eventually things would get better. A sad smile crossed your soulmate's face. But silence doesn't heal misunderstanding. No, you admitted. It only gives it room to grow. Those words settled heavily between you. Neither of you could change the past. But both of you could decide what happened next. Just then, footsteps approached. The elderly relative who had shown you the hidden photograph stood a short distance away. They had asked to come. Looking at your soulmate with kind, regretful eyes, they spoke softly. I owe you an apology. Your soulmate looked surprised. The elder continued. Our family allowed fear to become louder than truth. We judged you without knowing you. That was wrong. Your soulmate didn't interrupt. We cannot erase what happened, the elder said, but I hope one day you'll believe that not everyone in this family wanted to push you away. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then your soulmate replied quietly. I don't need a perfect family. I only needed a fair chance. The elder lowered their head. And you deserved one. As the afternoon turned into evening, something unexpected happened. You laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It wasn't carefree. But it was real. For the first time in months, both of you remembered what it felt like to smile without pretending. Hope had returned, but only as a small flame. And small flames must be protected carefully. Because not everyone was happy to see them burning again. Far away, someone watched from inside a parked car. The person had witnessed the entire meeting. Their expression hardened. If they find out everything, I'll lose control. They reached for their phone and made a single call. We have a problem, they said. They've started talking again. The voice on the other end answered calmly. Then make sure they never discover the rest of the truth. The call ended. Neither you nor your soulmate realized that the hidden letter was only the first secret. Someone was still determined to keep the biggest one buried. The evening sky faded into deep shades of blue as you and your soulmate walked in opposite directions after your meeting. Neither of you wanted to say goodbye, yet neither of you was ready to pretend that everything was healed. Trust, once broken, returns one careful step at a time. As your soulmate drove home, they couldn't stop thinking about the letter. For months, they had believed they were unwanted. Now they discovered that some of the silence between you had been created by someone else. The realization brought comfort, but also new questions. If one letter had been hidden, what else had been kept secret? That same night, the family member who had intercepted the letter sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. A small wooden box rested on the table in front of them. Inside were old photographs, handwritten notes, and a faded diary tied with a ribbon. Their hands shook as they opened it. Every page reminded them of a promise made years ago. Protect this family at any cost. For decades, they had believed that promise justified every difficult decision. But now, for the first time, they wondered if protecting the family had slowly become controlling it. They whispered into the empty room. "What have I done?" The next morning, your phone rang unexpectedly. It was the elderly relative. "There is something you need to see," they said. You hurried to their house. Without saying a word, they placed the old diary in your hands. "It belongs to your grandparents," they explained. "You deserve to know the whole story." You opened the first page. The diary described a love story from many years ago. Two people from different families had fallen deeply in love. They planned to build a life together. But relatives, believing they were protecting family honor and traditions, separated them. The relationship ended, not because love disappeared, but because fear won. The heartbreak affected everyone who came afterward. Generations inherited the fear without understanding where it began. As you continued reading, one sentence stood out above all the others. Never let fear decide another person's future. You closed the diary slowly. The words echoed in your mind. History had repeated itself. Meanwhile, your soulmate received a mysterious package at their apartment. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed you and your soulmate smiling together from happier days. On the back, someone had written only one sentence. "Some people will never accept this story." Your soulmate's heart raced. Who had sent it? Was it a warning? Or another attempt to frighten them? Instead of hiding the package, they immediately called you. "I think someone is trying to tell us something." You agreed to meet again.